All right, welcome in. We got 32 games across the college basketball landscape here today. We got about a half a dozen underway right now. Much more still to come as the madness is here. And we have got you covered here on the College Basketball Tip-Off Show, powered by WagerTalk.com. We're going to break down a few of these big games coming up here, as some teams, very bubble-esque, trying to keep winning here and give themselves a chance to get in. Teams like Ohio State, the Johnnies, Northwestern, Mississippi State, Michigan State. Go down a list. We got a lot of teams in need of wins today. Doesn't always mean they're going to get them, but these three guys here today are going to do their best to point you in the right direction. As there he is, and again, hint, hint, take a look at the shirts. It is Adam Trigger in the house. TC, Teddy Covers, ready to roll here, as is Mr. Rob Vino here in another loaded card here across the board. You got to love urgency in sports, and that's what March brings in college basketball here, guys, is don't look now, but we could very well see Matt Painter out in the conference tournament here, as Purdue is holding on for dear life against Michigan State. And then, of course, Rick Barnes doing Rick Barnes things for Tennessee, as they are getting absolutely hammered by Mississippi State. But we got a few games coming up. We'll keep you guys posted, those of you joining us live here today on this crazy and madness of a Friday. We're going to start with a game coming up a little bit later in the ACC with you, Trig. You're going to take a look here at North Carolina as they're getting ready to take on Pittsburgh, who somehow almost blew a 19-point lead there against Wake Forest yesterday, but held on to get it done. Now they got to take on the Tar Heels. 7.5 is what we're seeing, Trig. How you looking at this one tonight?
Yeah, so, you're right. The top does give it away. I do like Pitt here. I threw my Pitt shirt on. I got when I got to see them play earlier this year. Listen, these two teams haven't played since January 2nd. If you go back to that game, Pitt was a 4.5-point underdog at home. UNC took over in the second half of that game, pulled away, won comfortably. I think they ended up winning by 13. I remember watching the game. It really wasn't a great game at all for either team. North Carolina shot 36.5%. Pitt shot 30%. UNC went 5 for 17 from three. Pitt 5 for 29. Not very good. UNC won the rebounding battle 46-34. And I remember my takeaway, not so much after that game, Joe, but more in the subsequent weeks as I started to see Pitt sort of get better, or the signs that they may, kind of continue to improve, which they have. My takeaway was, man, I'd love to see them play North Carolina again. Of course, they didn't in the context of the regular season, but now we get that matchup here on a neutral floor in the semis of the ACC tournament. And it's a different Pitt team, right? Like, this is a team that has a couple freshmen on it. They've matured. They're better than they were on January 2nd. They've won 5 of 6. They're actually 10-2 going back to January 31st. So they're just a better team, in my opinion. I guess the concerning thing for me here, Joe, is like the defensive metrics aren't great. So like when you watch this team play, like they kind of pass the eye test defensively. They're a very good rebounding team. They're physical. They block shots. Feels like they should be better defensively, but KenPom has them 8th in ACC adjusted defense in conference play. That's a tiny bit concerning for me. But that's really the only concern I have here for Pitt. Well, I'll give a second one. The other concern is the fact that they're 243rd nationally in field goal percentage. It's kind of how they play. They take tough shots. They need to make tough shots typically to beat the better teams, but they can. Like Blake Hinson is a tough shot maker, and I don't know that there's anyone on North Carolina that can really guard him one-on-one. So there's a lot of things in this game, the way this matches up, that make me really like Pitt's chances of hanging around and pulling the upset here. North Carolina, they've been one of the top teams, if not the best defensively in the ACC, but they fall into a lot of the same traps Pitt does on offense. Their offensive efficiency is like 4th or 5th. And again, you go back to the first matchup, it was they kind of had to outdo each other as to who could shoot worse. I don't know that we'll get that here. But the matchup, in my opinion, wasn't as bad as that final score suggests. I actually think Pitt matches up nicely with North Carolina. They rebound. They have players specifically at the guard position that can really alter the game, that can get after the UNC guards and make this a close game. So unless Pitt goes ice cold and just cannot put the ball in the basket, I don't think they're going to get blown out here. I actually think Pitt has a great chance to win this game, and pull the upset, like we've seen some of these 4 or 5 seeds pull the upset on top seeds that in these respective conference tournaments. It's a game Pitt needs. I don't know that they're safely in yet. They certainly would be with a win here. So I like Pitt, and I'm taking the 7.5.
Are you worried at all, Trent? 'Cause I think the number I saw was 44% of their possessions end up in chucking up a three. If they're not falling, you think they have enough to be able to overcome that? Or do you think they can they compete at all on the inside, really?
No, it's one of the reasons I like Pitt here is because their ability to rebound those misses. They're a very good rebounding team. And there's no question. They take some bad shots. They take some tough shots. It's been happening all year. That's kind of just how their offense is made up, but it's getting a little bit better. I referenced the freshmen like Carrington, Lowe. They've become more mature players. And then, of course, Hinton can kind of go off and be the guy that keeps them in a game. So, I mean, yeah, if they go 5 for 29 from 3 again, could be in a little bit of a trouble, but I'll take my chances they're a little bit better than that. And if they are, I think it's probably a pretty competitive game.
Yeah, what do they call that kid carrying? The Billy Bob or Bobby? He's got some great nickname they call him on a team. And the kid is absolutely fantastic for a freshman there. All right, 62-60 here, Teddy, as we watch Matt Painter lose 20 pounds and sweat as even he's sweating down the stretch here. They can't make a free throw in the second half. It's hilarious. 19 seconds left there, 62-60 and 38-24, by the way, those of you joining us live here today. Tennessee has come out pissed off in the second half, and it shows here. But Teddy, you're going to head to the Big Ten, I believe, here tonight to take on Indiana and Nebraska. Now, I guess really this is not the same Indiana team from over a month ago. I mean, 5 straight, I think, now with that win last night. The kid Ware has been an absolute beast. And I think Mike Woodson got an extension somehow. We all thought he was going to be fired, but things are looking up for Indiana. Can they keep winning here tonight against Hoiberg and Nebraska?
So let me start with this. When I was in the show earlier in the week, I don't think every opinion I gave was wrong. I don't think I gave out one good piece of info. So we'll see if we can do a little bit better today. If that was your first time watching me on college basketball, you'll hopefully give a better showing because, hey, we're honest. When we win, we win. When we lose, we lose. We're not afraid to talk about it. Yesterday was a good day, and we'll see if we can have another one today. I'm sweating out this Michigan State plus the points right now against Purdue. And we'll stay in Big Ten action later in the day to talk about Nebraska and Indiana. And look, Indiana's season looked lost. What was it? The end of February, they got smashed at Penn State. There was a 4th straight loss, and nothing seemed to indicate that Indiana was about to turn it around. Since that time, they're undefeated. 5 straight wins and finding ways to win tight games. A lot of it is coming from the freshmen. Certainly, one of the things we love about this time of year is that you can make money betting on, they're freshmen. Well, I mean, Mackenzie Mugabo has been unbelievable for the Hoosiers right now. He's someone I want my money on. And he's someone who wasn't great early in the season. Indiana as a whole wasn't great early in the season. And that's the key point here. What am I looking for in March in conference tournaments? There are 2 things I'm looking for. I'm looking for favorites that don't care, that aren't excited about the conference tournament. The other thing I'm looking for is teams whose season-long stats aren't going to give you an accurate picture of where they are right now. And in my mind, Indiana is certainly that team. Ken Palm says this should be a 6-point spread. The money's poured in on Nebraska all day from the opener. The books open 3.5, 4 for this ball game, lower than the Ken Palm. They've respected Indiana, and I respect Indiana right now too. Certainly, regular season series dominated by the Huskers. They won both meetings by margin, 86-70, 85-70. Of course, they drained shots all day, 12 and 22 for three-point lands in Lincoln, and they had 14 three-pointers in Bloomington. Indiana turned the ball over in those ball games. It was the first game back with Xavier Johnson's first game back following a foot injury, which had something to do with turnovers. And Nebraska certainly hasn't been a team you're excited about laying points on the highway. I know they've won. They beat Indiana, and they did beat Michigan away from home. But as the steam comes in, and now I'm catching 5.5 in a game that I'm not convinced is going to be a two-possession game down the stretch. These tournament games, somehow, some way, they find a way to tighten near the end. I think this one does as well. Give me Indiana plus the points. I'll fade the steam against Nebraska.
I love it. Also, don't love Purdue's free throw shooting, Teddy, to your benefit here, as they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat in the second half here from the foul line. So that one's got about 3 seconds left with it. It's a 3-point game right now. And Purdue has got the ball as soon as they come out of the timeout. So that's a 1-8 there. You've got a 6-3 matchup Teddy was just talking about coming up a little bit later with Indiana and Nebraska, as we welcome in Mr. Rob Vino in the house, ready to roll. And you are going to head to the SEC for a interesting game here tonight. We get our first look here, I believe, right, at Calipari in Kentucky tonight, taking on Texas A&M, who we were just talking before the show, Rob. I'm saying, was it A&M a couple of years ago that was absolutely horrific, and then they made this crazy run at the end of the year, and then they went right to the final of the SEC tournament? I think lost to Tennessee here, and unfortunately didn't work out for them. But they're going to have to do something similar, I think, here in the SEC if they're going to get in. So a desperate team here against Kentucky. Are you buying them here tonight, 5.5, or do you think Calipari and the crew handle business?
Well, we're going to hope Calipari and crew handle business. Out on a limb a little bit here, Joe, laying 5.5 with UK. I mean, you can question their defense, and when they don't cover, it seems to be against teams that are physical on the interior. A couple examples were certainly the South Carolina game and the initial A&M game. But I got to question a bunch about these SEC defensive analytics. They would lead you to believe that there's really good defenses in the SEC. And every time I turn around, all these good defenses are giving up 80 points, 90 points, 100 points. The offenses have overwhelmed the defenses in the SEC for sure. And even in the case of the first game between these two, where A&M won in overtime, Kentucky scored 89 points in regulation. So if I go down the list, I mean, they've scored 85 again at Tennessee. They scored 89, as I mentioned, at A&M. They scored 91 at Mississippi State. They scored 90 at Mississippi State. And they scored 70 at Auburn. Those are all road games where UK had no problem with any of these top defenses inside this league. They can score. The other side can't shoot. If they're in the boat skimming water, the ball probably wouldn't hit the water. Unlike the team that you mentioned that made it all the way to the conference final, that team didn't have the absolute worst 2-point field goal shooting inside the SEC. They weren't the 11th best out of 14 teams in offensive efficiency, and they can't shoot threes. I mean, with A&M, it just seems to be real simple. Get your guys to the boards. Don't let them drive to the rim. And watch these guys shoot from beyond the arc and just grab the rebounds. Because aside from Wade Taylor, who shoots every now and again, I don't know what happened to him this year, but they can't shoot the basketball. They're subject to long droughts, and you kind of want that if you have a favorite that can score. I think there's spots here where Kentucky can absolutely open up margin. If I'm concerned at all, I'm concerned because it is Buzz Williams on the other sidelines, but Buzz Williams hasn't been able to make a difference from the majority of this season. I mean, things happen like yesterday where they play Ole Miss and run off 80 points, but those are few and far between. A&M hasn't shot 39% in 4 of their last 6. I don't think they're going to do so here. I think Kentucky's a little bit better defensively than they were to start the year. But I really have to hope that they rebound here, Joe, because if they get crushed on the boards and give up a lot of
Mm.
second chance points, then they probably don't cover 5.5. But I'm going to think that they do a better job than the -8 in rebounds the first time around. And against Tennessee, who's a real good rebounding team, just recently in their last game, UK got them to a standstill. So I'm going to try UK minus the 5.5. Ignore what happened yesterday against Ole Miss. Ole Miss has a couple of guys that are 7-2 and 7-5, and they still can't keep you off the boards. It's kind of crazy. I think Kentucky will do so. We're going to try them here, minus 5.5, Kentucky over A&M.
All right, going to lay it there with UK. Outstanding end to the Michigan State game there, Teddy, as they laid Michigan State with 3 seconds left. Let them just go in and get that final bucket there. 67-62 in the most, I mean, it was like Moses, the parting of the seas. They didn't even try to stop them, and they ended up getting a last-minute bucket and a cover there. For Michigan State. Purdue will advance here. And big shout out to those of you, Bill and Josiah, John Finley, Titan CT, those of you guys joining us live here today on the College Basketball Tip-Off Show. We certainly appreciate it. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button if you're new to us here at WagerTalk TV. And a thumbs up if you could, guys. We certainly appreciate it. We've got 3 best bets coming your way. And we all wish this show started earlier so we could have all hopped on South Florida, apparently, who is not interested in anything you have to say about them. Overrated my arse, as they are just hammering away right now. Last check, I think it was 53-23. They are handling business here against East Carolina. All right, we got it, Trig. You talked North Carolina taking on Pitt. Judging from the shirt, we know exactly where you landed there. If you're just joining us, we'll make it simple for you. But how about a best bet here tonight on the card? Was there a game that you circled that you like a little bit more than the others? Because I have a feeling it's going to be up in central New York, western New York. Where are we heading here for your best bet tonight?
Well, Joe, there's definitely a game I like more than the others. It's on my page right now. It's a 5% play. I'm 12-3 on my last 15, 5% college basketball plays, 20-9, I think, on my last 29 basketball plays overall. So you should check that out. That's by far my favorite thing today. It's the only client play I've released so far. If I add a second, it's probably going to be one of the 2 I've spoke about. So just follow me on Twitter at TopLightSI. I will confirm that for free. And I'll just tweet it out if I end up playing one of these. St. Peter's kind of falls into the. So yesterday, my 2 plays were Kent State and St. Bonaventure, and I kind of just chose to punch back at the market a little bit. St. Peter's is up to 3. I think if this steamed a little bit more, I may even kind of take a shot with them as well. I do anticipate the market to continue to bet Quinnipiac, so maybe we will get that number at some point from now until 6:30 Eastern. But I am leaning towards St. Peter's, and I'll kind of make the determination in the next hour or 2 if I'm going to make it a client play. But it is, I think, the best the other thing out there, at least that I can see right now. So in the preview I did for the MAC conference, I talked about the fact that there's only 2 teams in this league that are in the top 100 in KenPom in either offense or defense. And there's actually no one in this conference that's in the top 100 in offense. It's 2 teams that both are in the top 100 defensively, and it's St. Peter's and it's Marist, with St. Peter's being the number 1 defensive efficiency team in the league. So that's important because obviously, you want to know who the good defensive teams are. But I think it's even more important at this venue at Boardwalk Hall, which is kind of played as an under type venue. And I thought that some of that might not be as much the case this year because now they've been there for a couple years, but right back to games decided in the 50s at Boardwalk Hall, I think it was 50-48 with Ryder yesterday, which is exactly the type of game that's going to favor St. Peter's. because they've been downright atrocious at times offensively this year. 349th nationally in field goal percentage. But you have to give them a little bit of a break for their MAC specific offensive metrics. And the reason is they missed Corey Washington for 7 games. He is by far their most legit and best offensive player, 16.8 points per game. He's sort of the only one on that offense that can really kind of take over, go for 20 and like carry his team for, to a win. Without him for 7 games in MAC play, St. Peter's was 1-6. Really bad without him. So he's so integral to what that team does offensively, which is, pretty much what he does. If you look at the metrics and, with him in there, it does allow them enough firepower to sort of lean on their defense and win these types of games in the 50s, which Boardwalk Hall has served that purpose so far over the years. And a lot, it was the case in yesterday's game against Ryder. The reason I think this might be an okay matchup with Washington back is Quinnipiac, they kind of are more reliant on getting to the rim. If you can turn Quinnipiac into a 3-point shooting team, you have a pretty good chance to beat this team. The MAC was a really poor conference this year. Some of the bottom of the MAC were some of the worst teams in the country. Unfortunately, I had a front row seat to that watching Siena basketball play this year. I believe they were the worst in this conference in just about everything. But Quinnipiac, 8th in MAC, in 3-point shooting in MAC play. That's really concerning, especially when you talk about St. Peter's defensively. By far the best paint defense in the league. The best 2-point field goal percentage defense, and they're actually top 50 in that metric in the country. So you would have to think St. Peter's can force Quinnipiac into shooting the ball, or needing some jumpers to win this game, which has not been good for teams in this tournament. And now we've got a little bit of historical data on that. I believe they've been playing at Boardwalk Hall now since 2020. They tried to play there in 2020, played like 1 game and it got called off. But so now we've got 2021, 2022, and 2023. And it's been really tough to score consistently in this building. You look at the 2 regular season matchups, Joe, Corey Washington didn't play in the loss. Okay. I just talked about how poor St. Peter's was without him. He comes back, they blow Quinnipiac out in the game that he was available in. So again, I just St. Peter's being offensively challenged is a concern, but it's maybe less of concern in this building. So I think if this one continued to creep up and we got a 3.5, I may have to just come and jump in here. I think St. Peter's has a great chance to win this game. And if you're getting a couple key numbers, why not take a shot?
Yeah, a lot of steam in this game here for sure towards Quinnipiac. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. 12 minutes ago, by the way, 51-33, Tennessee still getting crushed there by Mississippi State, who is firmly on the bubble here. And Teddy covers in the house. Now, Teddy, let me ask you a quick question here before you break down a best bet. And for those of you who might be in the chat room hanging out here, did they just fire Juwan Howard too? Is that what I'm seeing? We're going to have to double check on that one there. See, Teddy, you made fun of DePaul the other day and Chris Holtman, and they hired him as soon as we were done. I was laughing at I'm like, Teddy just talked about Ohio State fired Holtman and how bad DePaul was, and voila, Chris Holtman is in the game now. He'll be your head coach at DePaul. But we talk a lot now. We hear a lot today about on the bubble, have to win, need another win if they're going to keep their March Madness alive. How much does that play into it when you're looking at some of these games, or is that just all ridiculous? Either you like the team, you don't. Whether they have to win or not is immaterial at this point in the season.
I would call it a negative when a team is in a must-win situation. I'm much more likely to fade that team than I am to back them. All the pressure's on that team. Sometimes you find them in the right spot or against the right opponent. It's not like it's an auto fade for these must-win teams. But make no mistake about it. The reason they're must-win is because they're mediocre. Everybody knows they're must-win, so you're getting very little point spread value with those squads. And I tend to look to fade must-win teams more than I will back them.
Oh,
in
it's
general.
good. Well, in general, yes. Well, it's playing a role here in a number of these games coming up today. So that's a great point here, Teddy. Your best bet is interesting because there's going to be a whole lot of people here. Now, let me just say this. If Patino shows up in the Colonel Sanders, suit, we're screwed. We're all screwed. He's going to run it. They're going to score 1,000,000 points, and that's going to be the end of it. So, barring the white suit here against UConn, what kind of chance do you give the Johnnies to get it done here?
I give the Johnnies a good against the point spread. I give them a good chance. Against the on the money line, I give them a chance. They're live. Dan Hurley last year in this tournament talked about we own MSG when they won their opener. Of course, they lost the next game. All right. They won the national title last year. That worked out just fine for them. When we look at Hurley in this tournament, since leaving the AAC for the new Big East, what are the numbers? 1 point spread cover. One in 3 years. It hasn't been pretty in that regard. UConn is not a team that offers anyone any point spread value at this stage of the season. You can say, I'm going to bet UConn because they're the best team, which they are, but you're laying a premium to back this squad. And given the coach's track record, given what we know about this team, the focus next week, not this week. I love fading number 1 seeds in conference tournaments. Get them a win and get them on and go home. Get them a win and go home. That's what coaches want when they're looking for a deep tournament run. And look, we know what Pitino's done in tournaments over the course of his career. All right. It's not like we talk about great tournament coaches, and Rick Pitino is certainly on that list. Another thing I talk about that I look for this time of the year in college basketball is real simple. What teams are playing at a different level than their full season stats would indicate. And the Red Storm are certainly in that category. This team was mediocre at best. And a lot of times, not even mediocre. Pitino called them out after 5 losses in 6 games in February. And since that time, 6 straight wins. They're bet on all the way right now. So this is a game where I see a battle, not a blowout. I'll take the points in this one with Johnny, with the Pitino, the Johnnies, the Red Storm, whoever you want to call them. I think the chalk here is.
Got to go with the Johnnies. Plus 9.5, says Teddy. Should be a good one there in the Big East coming up a little bit later. And Rob Vino ready to roll here. Vino with a best bet here tonight. And this should be a pretty fun one here as well. And let me ask you quick, though, your view on the idea of teams having to win in this kind of spot this time of year. Does it play a role with you? Or are you just, you like Teddy. It's, I think that's just way too much of a negative situation here to even consider it.
Yeah, I kind of answer all these questions in the same way. And it's the way I handicap. Nothing's a blanket statement. I wouldn't give you one way or the other here. They're all situational. Teddy just actually mentioned all the pressure is on the team that needs to win. I'll talk from the other angle of the UConn St. John's game in a minute. But here's a head coach who found a way to take the pressure off of his team, even though they needed to win. So certain coaches can do certain things. As far as number 1 seeds are concerned, I was asked this question yesterday on a different show outside of WagerTalk. And, these number 1 seeds, Kelvin Sampson is a number 1 seed, and he's going to be different than Dan Hurley. So you can't blanket statement these guys either. Kelvin Sampson, first year in the Big 12, he's won the regular season. Anybody you could tell me Kelvin Sampson's happy with his win and now he's going to bow out. But I'm not going to agree with you. Kelvin Sampson's a different mentality. He's first year in the league. He's won the regular season. He wants the conference championship. He wants everything, that guy. There's no end. What his wants are limitless. So, again, some of these coaches play it one way. Maybe Duke played their way out last night. Maybe they're just not that good. But never answer any of these questions with a blanket statement. I think all these coaches, all these teams, all these situations are all, all done by situation, and we'll talk about one right here now.
All right, well, let's head to it here for your best bet tonight. Familiar game. So how are you approaching it here tonight there, Vino, in the Big East?
Well, let's face it, it's not often that the head coach of one of the teams tells us exactly what the game plan is. That post game out of Rick Pitino yesterday was fantastic. I couldn't check my accounts fast enough to see how much money I had in there. The guy comes out and tells you that he doesn't believe that this particular team or this particular time of the season, your team should feel any pressure. He thought his team felt some pressure. You know what he told his team yesterday? Go out and score 100 points. He flat out said he doesn't want his team in any half court situations in this tournament because he feels like when you get caught up in half court, you overthink everything. He wants his team 94 feet, pedal to the metal, try and score 100. And he thinks that when you're playing free and easy, at least with this bunch, that's the quickest way to success and the quickest way to release any pressure that the team might be feeling for wins. Well, you know what? So far, he's been right. I mean, thank you, Rick Pitino, for telling us as well. I'm sure he doesn't want to be in half court sets against UConn, the number one ranked efficiency defense in the Big East, the number 7 ranked efficiency defense in the nation, and a team that just absolutely parks Donovan Clingan's butt at the rim and says, no, you're not getting here. St. John's makes a living off of getting to the rim. They're number 2 in the country. I was surprised to realize, Joe, that they're number 2 in the country in quickest second chance points. Ball hits the rim within 5 seconds. St. John's is the second highest percentage in the nation of getting the ball back in the basket. So they're going to run. They're in front of the home crowd. They're going to run again. The coach as much as told us so. And I don't believe that Dan Hurley's so afraid to run against St. John's either. But let me just go through a couple of things here. The play I'm going to use for the show is first half over 69 points. I think it's been bumped to 69 and a half now. So we need 70 to get there. Halftime scores of the first 2 meetings. 32-26 St. John's, only 58 points. That game was played at Stores. That game was played while Donovan Clingan was hurt. Second meeting was here at MSG back on February the 3rd. 73 total points, 37-36 St. John's again. But that game was played by UConn without their starting power forward, Alex Caravan. Still got over the number, even without Caravan. Both of those games, guys, were slow possession games. This is before Pitino had the revelation, before he, put on the Colonel Sanders suit and called out his players individually for being no good and how he knew the team was going to stink since August. They're played at 67 and 65 possession games. This one's likely to be played higher because the last 6 games St. John's has played, they've scored 80 plus, and they're up around 70 possessions per game right now over the course of their last 6 games. So you start putting all these elements together, and it could be easy enough to just say, the coach has told me the game plan, I'm going to go play over in some way, shape, or form. But when you start adding all these other things to it, that UConn could play St. John's and score 77 points without Caravan, that UConn could play St. John's and get the 73 at halftime without Caravan, you have to believe that in a game where the pedals, to the floor, we're going to see some points. St. John's has to have it that way. They don't want to play 54-52, I don't believe. And the coach told us they won't. So for me, I think that if you're St. John's, the asset to running up and down the floor also is you've got a 7-2 kid who might be the best player on UConn that probably doesn't keep up in that style of game. So I'm going to play first half for purposes of the show. My best bet over 69 points. I think, like I said, it's been bumped up to 69 and a half now. St. John's UConn comes up at about 5:30 Eastern time. We'll go first half over, but I think there's multiple ways you can get at this one.
Yeah, no, I like it. Johnny's were 4 of 14, I believe, from deep in that last game there. I do think some regression might be happening here. So we certainly should be able to get a little bit better from deep there. Yes, Trig.
I just want to correct something. I saw a comment in the chat. The person is semi-right. So I want to just correct something I said. Corey Washington did not play in the first meeting against Quinnipiac, but Quinnipiac did win both. I misread my note. I made notes for Marist as well, and it was Marist that St. Peter split with, not Quinnipiac. So they did have Corey Washington back for the second one. He didn't play in the first one, but yes, Quinnipiac did sweep both of those regular season meetings. No, it does not change my opinion on today's game. I still like St. Peter's just as much as I did when I incorrectly said that before. So yeah, St. Peter's +3, and it'll probably be a client play if it gets up to 3.5 or 4.
All right, I believe that was James in the chat room there. Appreciate you clarifying that and throwing that in there. As usual here, guys, certainly do appreciate you hanging with us here, as still a 20-point game with Tennessee getting smoked by number 9 Mississippi State here. And got a good one coming down to the wire with UTEP and Sam Houston. For those of you hanging out here, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. And of course, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, while we have a best bet, I believe, from our friends at the Gold Sheet. And what are they going to be looking at here tonight? Well, little birdie tells me that maybe Temple betting on themselves. Gold Sheet betting on themselves here, and Temple +7. That's what I meant to say. +7 Temple taking on Charlotte. Temple only had 2 players play, I believe, more than 30 minutes yesterday. They handled business rather easily, and yeah, they are a bit of a shady program, but they have been ever since that story dropped. In fact, they've actually played some of their best basketball. Charlotte plays at the number 356 tempo in the country. So when it comes to getting separation, not that big a deal. And Charlotte was the beneficiary of a very, very weak AAC schedule here this year. And boy, oh boy, Temple not happy here after that story broke, and they are showing it. So +7 from our friends at the Gold Sheet, goldsheet.com. We'd certainly encourage you guys to check that out. Should be a great card here tonight. And to recap, for those entirely too damn lazy not to actually listen to a damn word these guys said, well, here you go. Right at it, Teddy going with the Johnnies, +9.5. Trig, St. Peter's +3. Keep an eye, though. That thing creeps up anymore. It will definitely be a client play for him. Robbie's going to go in that UConn game as well. He likes the over in the first half. And our friends at the Gold Sheet, they like Temple +7 right now in that game against Charlotte. Interesting games coming up. I know the chat room was all over Wichita State, UAB. Wichita State playing the spoiler here. Across the board. Will that continue? And then FAU has got a game as well coming up. The FAU Owls trying to make it back to a Final Four run. They've got a game coming up, I believe, in the 5:30 market, somewhere around there. So plenty of basketball coming up. But as Teddy told you, as Trig told you, as Rob Dino told you guys, plenty of opportunities to partner up with them here across the board in college hoops. The madness is upon us. Visit Teddy, visit Rob, visit Trigger over at his page there at WagerTalk.com. And then, of course, make plans to come back and join us again as we get ready for brackets, and more brackets here. Guys, we'll be back on Monday. We appreciate the time. Big shout out to those of you, Finley, Killer J, Sandoval, Titan CT and company, Josiah Queen. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Give us that thumbs up. And best of luck with all the plays here today. In fact, if you click on that video on your screen right now, you'll get access to some of the other big game previews we have coming up on today's slate right here at Wager Talk TV. Best of luck with the plays. We'll see you for the NBA tip-off show coming up next.